Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you are a new subscriber, welcome. I've definitely gotten a few more of those over this past week. Needless to say, this past weekend has been something of a roller coaster, but super exciting to see the trend that's been happening lately. And for those who have been with me since day one, thank you so much. Your support and your spreading the word about this little channel here mean the world to me. So, little sincere moment. As for this video, I figured it's October, and this is really one of my favorite months because one of my favorite holidays happens, Halloween. And I'm excited to share with you a few videos of some concepts I've had dancing around in my head, and they deal with the spooky and the creepy, and you know, hey, for October, it's completely appropriate. So anyways, in this video itself, I'm gonna show you how I made my haunted hanging tree. And within this video, I am gonna do another little review on how to use floral wire and floral wrap because those are two tools I definitely do like to use. So in the beginning, you'll see my technique. I'm gonna explain a couple of nuances about that floral wrap because I think there's a quality issue we need to look into. A few of you have asked me questions about why it's not working right, so we'll address that as well. And then in the rest of the video, there's gonna be some picture tutorial going through how I did it step by step to create the tree itself. So stay tuned, I hope you enjoy it. As always, questions down below, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thanks so much, see you later. Now, I do have a video fully devoted to floral supplies. However, I've been getting some messages about how people just can't seem to get the hang of wrapping the wire with the floral wrap. And I think I discovered part of the reason that this might be happening. I tend to not give specific brand names simply because I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be available near you. One day I did go to Michael's. I was running low on my brown floral wrap and discovered that after I started using the Ashland brand, I was having a lot of problems with it. And for me, that's where it kind of clicked that, okay, this might be our culprit. So what I'm going to do is I am going to include in my description a link to this particular kind of floral wrap. I find it has just the right balance of tackiness. It doesn't muck up your hands. It actually holds on like it needs to, but it doesn't get to be so tacky that it either rips off of itself or rips off what you're trying to wrap, or you just can't even get the wrap started because it's sticking to you. In my description, I'm going to give you the Amazon link to this particular type of wrap. This is my go-to wrap. This is what I love. This is what goes nicely. And of course, it's not exactly a full name brand wrap. However, I like it. So the trick with floral wrap is your angles. And it also helps to put the wheel of the wrap to your non-dominant side hand. All right, so I'm putting it towards my left. And what you do is you start by first putting the wrap around the wire by placing the wire on top and then doing a quick fold and pinch, because this is going to start sealing the wrap to it. You can even run your thumbnail across it like that. And then what you're going to do is pinch together, pointer and thumb of your dominant hand, and roll that little section so it starts to roll in on itself. Then what you're going to start doing is you're going to hold this at a 45-degree-ish angle. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want it to have it at a slight angle, and your left hand is going to guide the tape while your right hand, or your dominant hand and your non-dominant hand, and then you just start rolling, and as you roll, pull the wire up and away from your torso. Okay, so this is how it works to get things moving. And I will say, when I used that Ashland tape, I could not do that. So I'm thinking maybe that might be part of the issue. So quick little review on how to do the wrapping of the wires. I will link the other video that I have at the very end, and you can take a look at that when you're done. At Dollar Tree, I found some candles that are fantastic for this feature. You want to make sure you get one of those in the pack. You can also get some straws they have there. I decided to go with the green because I liked the color effect that happened when you had the green over the candlelight. What you do need to make sure you do, though, is take off that bit that mimics a flame and have the LED bulb exposed so you can insert the straw on top of that bulb. Insert the straw, and then with a marker, mark where the straw and the top of that candle meet, and that's going to act as a line of measurement for you. Then cut the straw to the length you want to be at the base of your tree where all the branches are going to meet at the trunk. Next, use your hot glue gun and carefully hot glue the straw to the top part of the candle where that line was first drawn to attach the two together. To be safe, just turn it on and make sure it looks good. You want to prep a long strand of floral wire with the brown floral wrap, and then you're going to cut it into segments of varying lengths. This is going to help you start building the branches to your trees. At the same time, you can also wrap up the pipe cleaners to get them ready to act as the thicker branches in parts of the trunk of your tree. To create the branches, first take a longer piece of the wrapped wire and a shorter piece and have them meet up together and wrap it a little bit. Then shift another smaller piece further down the longer piece and wrap that around as well. And it's going to start building what looks like tree branches. As you get those smaller sections built with the thin florist wire, you can then attach those to the wrapped pipe cleaners. And this is going to create thicker branches and end up looking something like a sapling of a tree. The next thing you can do is add a thin piece of wire to the very bottom of the pipe cleaner, and that's going to taper out and end up looking like a tree root. There really is no set rule with how many smaller branches you can put onto the pipe cleaners. It's more towards making it look how you want it to aesthetically. I ended up doing about 3 smaller sets of branches onto a pipe cleaner and then had 4 of those pipe cleaners to create my tree. The other thing I had on hand were extra pipe cleaners wrapped, as well as extra lengths of wrapped floral wire, because I knew I was going to need them for lashing these onto the straw. So it helps to make those at this point as well. You're going to want the tried and true Dollar Tree foam board for the base itself, where the candle is going to be tucked into it. I cut 3 different squares of 3 different sizes, stacked on top of each other. The 3 actually meet the level of the candle. So what you're going to do is start beveling the edges and put the smaller one on top of the larger one and bevel those edges around, and do the same thing with the last piece, just to have them sort of graduate with more of an even flow into each other as opposed to stacked objects. So that's the first thing I ended up doing with the foam. Then what you need to do before gluing the pieces all together is put that candle top into the center of each of your pieces, just to sort of mark around where you need to cut out the holes so that you can nest the candle into these stacked pieces of foam. Once you have that established and everything's nesting nicely together, then you can go ahead and hot glue those foam pieces to each other. And you can use the hot glue to go around the edges and smooth things out a little bit more, again, just to kind of create a better flow of from top to bottom of the piece. Once the hot glue of the foam pieces has cooled, you can then take the piece and put it on top of cardboard from a cereal box, and that's going to create your final base to keep the foam from curling up on itself. Finally, when you have the straw glued into the candle, you can do a test fit and make sure everything looks good, and it can be removed easily from inside the foam piece. Now comes the time for assembly. What you're going to do is take Gorilla Glue glue sticks, and yes, you do want to make sure you're using this particular type of glue stick. And you're going to put that into your hot glue gun, and you're going to start gluing those branches, saplings that you've just made using the floral wire, the floral wrap, and the pipe cleaners. I found it helped to sort of bend where you want the root to start, and then run a line of the glue on the branch part of the tree itself, and then push it up against the straw and just let it hang on there for a little bit. Do keep in mind, I use a low temp hot glue gun for this. I would not use anything higher than that because it could melt the straw. So as you build this up and start adding all of your branches around the straw, you want to make sure that you leave some gaps, because that's what's going to allow the candle to glow through the tree trunk. And once you get the longer bits of the tree put on, that's where you'll take those wrapped pieces of pipe cleaner as well as the extra pieces of floral wire and wrap them around, again, the straw area to help build up the tree trunk itself. The key here is still to make sure you leave those gaps, because you want the light to come through. When you have that all situated, the very last step for the trunk itself is you're going to take some of the floral wrap and wrap a very thin layer around everything you've just assembled. However, you don't want it to wrap over itself, so you leave some gapping here and there, and again, that allows the light to shine through once you have the candle turned on. Now let's move on to the paint. Here's a picture of the paints that I used for this project. The first thing I did was I put a dark coat of paint onto both the foam piece as well as the candle piece. And this is a mixture of equal parts black, dark brown, and either Mod Podge or white glue, Elmer's glue, mixed together. And then you paint that onto the foam piece, and you will also paint it onto the candle base. But you don't have to take that dark all the way down to the bottom because that part will be covered up on the candle. I kept it more towards the upper part of the candle just to make sure that they flowed into each other. Using your hot glue gun, you can thicken up the roots and make them look more root-like. Just make sure to bend them in the directions you want them to go first. After the glue cooled, I then painted on the dark brown over the hot glue to make sure that that wasn't transparent. It took a couple coats. It depends on the type of paint you might be using, but again, paint that dark brown. The other thing I did at that point was take some of the darker paint mix that you just did, and I swept it up the base of the trunk and onto the branches just to start bringing out some depth as well to the tree itself. Quick tip, it does help to have the candle on while you paint the whole time, just so you can see where you don't want paint to go. Now we're going to get into painting the details onto the base and portions of the candle. So what you want to do is first start with your two darker colors of brown and green. You are going to sponge those onto the now dried base of foam as well as the candle. And once those colors are dried a little bit more, you can then move into the lighter tones of brown and green and sponge those on again to the base as well as the candle. And when those are completely dry, that's when you can start putting things together to see if you have any parts that need a little bit of touching up here and there, because you are going to have that candle bit going in and out so that you can turn it off and on. So this is sort of your check time to make sure that everything is painted and that nothing is showing exposed as either white or pure black or anything like that. The other thing I did for the tree is I took the lighter brown and I swept that up and around the branches and the trunk, again to sort of highlight the texture that was going on there. And I did take some of the lighter green and dab it on around the root area to sort of mimic the idea of there was moss there and that type of thing. I didn't do too many of the darker tones simply because I didn't want to make the tree too dark. Whenever you do paint the tree though, you need to make sure that you let each paint coat dry completely before moving on to your next color. The very last thing I did is took my light gray and I took a dry brush technique up and around the tree on the branches and the trunk and the roots to bring out the gnarled forms and shape of the tree. For those of you who have already watched the Lich video, this is going to seem very familiar to you. You're going to take a small strip of cheesecloth and you're going to make a mix of dark gray, white glue, and water. And in this case, you're going to do equal parts of the glue and the paint with extra little bit of water added in because you want it to be slightly runny, you don't want it to be thick. You dip the cheesecloth in, you wring it out really well. You can do that with a paper towel too to help get out the excess moisture. And when you're done, you're going to get this nice gray tone to the cheesecloth. While the cheesecloth is still wet, what you're going to do next is cut very small strips from that dyed cheesecloth, and you're going to pull at the threads to make it look stringy, and it's actually going to start looking like Spanish moss because of those threads. What I did was take those small strips and I would put them over the branches and slightly tug down to further encourage the threads to sort of unravel and drape down and hang loose and take on that Spanish moss effect. And now it's time for the fog feature. And again, this is going back to a similar technique from the Lich video. You're going to take that Poly-Fil, you're going to pull off a small amount, fluff it out a little bit, and you're first going to attach it around the candle zone of your base. So only hot glue where that candle base is. You do not want this on the foam yet. So hot glue your tufts of Poly-Fil onto the candle base. Once you have your tufts on that part, you can then put a few tufts onto the foam part of the base using a similar concept. Of course, you want to make sure you allow spaces for the roots to stick out. Once you have everything in place, you can go through and start fluffing everything out and have it look like the fog is sort of crawling out from the center of the tree. The noose is actually very simple to make. This is an off-white taupe colored pipe cleaner that I had, And basically what you do is you hold it over a flame and you allow the fibers to get slightly charred on each other. When everything is cooled, you might have to blow a couple flames out, but once it's cooled, just take your fingertips and brush off any excess charring or bits that have burned off, and then you wrap it in the form of a hangman's noose, and you take the other end of the pipe cleaner and you wrap it around the branch. And then what I did is I took a very thin black wash and I used it to highlight certain areas of the noose just to bring out features of it. And I thought it'd be fun to include a little video so you can see the flickering candle in action inside of the tree. You can see it gives it this really spooky, glowy effect. And here are a couple stills as well so you can get some better detail shots of it. But here you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new today. Sorry, I think there's something in my teeth. I get it? Well, that's the last time I tell the hairdresser to take a little something off the top. Either it's crooked or I am. I'm Batman with the chin strap. Ow. No. I feel like a little kid playing dress up in her daddy's clothes. Dope, dope, dope. So what are you gonna be?